You're watching Sports Extra Overtime, sponsored by Michael's Italian Feast.
Welcome back to Sports Extra Overtime. Now time to take a deeper dive into the games of the night. We bring in John Camoser to our studio here. John called the Washington-Morton game with Clutch Sports Media. You can follow him on Twitter at JCOM91. This game was great for 3 quarters. It was a tight game, nip and tuck, and then a big fourth quarter for the Panthers.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, you know, both teams coming out were going to exchange punches in a big Mid-Atlantic Conference game between Morton and Washington, 2 big rivals in front of a sellout crowd, so this game definitely lived up to the hype for those 3 quarters.
Yeah, homecoming in Washington. We're going to see the highlights now. A big night again for Seth Glass, a couple of more touchdowns for him on the Morton side, but the running back at Washington is pretty good too. Thomas Borges had 2 big scoring plays tonight.
Yeah, don't let Seth Glass overshadow Thomas Borges. He had some big plays himself, and you know, Seth Glass is not a surprise coming in with 2 big running touchdowns, 1 for 96 yards, 1 for 50 yards. That's something you're going to expect to see from him week in and week out. But Washington answered the call right after that, and they looked really solid tonight, both defensively in that fourth quarter and then offensively throughout the game with all those weapons they have.
They got a pick six too. We shouldn't overlook that.
Yeah, Noah Hogerwarf had a pick 6 from Lane Kaufman for 40 yards. He returned it to the house, and at about the 5:15 mark, and then about a minute later, Evan Geiser had an interception that set up Noah Barlett to Drew Lewis for another touchdown, which ultimately sealed the game 35-14.
All right, now both teams have big games next week, right? Pekin is next up for Washington, and Morton has to try to bounce back against undefeated Metamora.
Yeah, really big games. Morton's going to host the Metamora Redbirds, 5-0, and then you have Washington against Pekin. So everyone's trying to get a little piece of that Mid-Atlantic title. It's going to be interesting next week.
It was a fun game to watch tonight in Washington, and glad that you were able to give us some analysis tonight. Thank you, John, for analysis of that big game. Now we're going to look at a Big 12 conference matchup across the studio. Let's go back to Matt McLean.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. Joining us now is Steve Cease from our Twin Cities newsroom. Steve is from the city's 92.9 radio, and you can follow him on Twitter at ProfCease for all your score updates. Steve, you were at that Bloomington game versus Richwoods, the Big 12 Conference showdown. Bloomington is a winner in this one, 40-7, primarily because of their dominant defense, correct?
Yeah, and after that week 1 loss to Normal Community, Bloomington didn't know what they had on defense, but the defense has stepped up since then. Of course, the heartbreaker to Normal West last week, but the defense played really well throughout that ball game, excess of the last minute, and they played lights out tonight against Richwood. Richwoods only had 79 yards of rushing offense on the entire game, but more than half of that came in the fourth quarter while the second-string defense was in. With the first-string defense in, the Knights only had 26 yards on 17 carries. They had 2 turnovers tonight, including the Raiders' first interception of the season, and 7 tackles for a loss. They dominated that side of the football the entire game, giving the offense a short field, which led to a lot of these Bloomington points.
Yeah, Bloomington's defense obviously really good, but their quarterback was great tonight too. Marcus Griffith getting it done in the air and on the ground.
Yeah, Griffin had his best game of the season. He came in tonight 6 for 19 on the year and certainly had his best game through the air. He was 8 for 14 tonight, 108 yards through the air, but he really got it done more on the ground. 15 carries, $192, 3 touchdowns. Awesome rushing performance for the quarterback. And we got to talk about his favorite target as well. Adam Beasley, the wide receiver, 6 end-arounds tonight, 120 rushing yards from the wide receiver position, 2 rushing touchdowns, also caught 4 balls for 72 yards, so a great job by Beasley over there in the slot as well.
And Stephen, our final 20 seconds, we got to give it up for the guys up front for Bloomington. They were really great, the offensive line.
Oh, yeah, and these guys don't get enough credit. Look, 388 total rushing yards for Bloomington tonight. Got to shout out the 5 guys on the O-line. Miguel Espindola, Tyus Jackson, Jack Weltha, Isaac Walls, Chet Swank. Those 5 guys, give them all the credit tonight for the Purple Raiders.
Hey, love the offensive line shout out. Good win for Bloomington. Richwoods loses in Bloomington. All right, Steve, thanks for all of that. You can hear from our Friday night correspondents right here on Sports Extra Overtime every week.